All right, welcome to this segment. This segment is going to really talk about kind of some of the foundational fundamentals of selling janitorial supplies. And it's part of the bigger picture, if you will. Now, what I mean by that is these are kind of the segments that we talk about. We talked about principles earlier on self concept, internal representation. So that's a good foundation to start thinking about uh, influence and your own self and your own abilities and your own drive to grow your business. Positioning, prospecting, profit creation, persuasion, presenting, and promote are all kind of work together, but I've sectioned them off as individual segments. So we're going to really talk about really kind of positioning right now, but it goes along with just some foundational principles. So what I want to talk about right now is starting off before we dive right into positioning is kind of go over the industry a little bit, because I think that once you have a little bit idea about the industry, specifics about the janitorial industry, and you can kind of navigate and kind of work with me or see kind of like what the strategy is. How do we position ourselves based on some of the data? So let's dive in and take a look at this. So this is, talk about industry data. Now, this data comes from ISSA. Every few years they do a report on the janitorial distribution industry and where they are. Now, if you don't know what ISSA is, it stands for International Sanitary Supply Association. They recently changed the name to Worldwide Cleaning, I believe. But they're kind of like the industry, arching over industry of the janitorial supplies and janitorial services industry. The Building Service Contractors International Association is affiliated with ISSA. They're separate, but they're affiliated. So just to give you some idea. Now, all I want to really get you to notice about this slide is sales by the sector. Okay, so you're going to notice that the building service contractors is 15.7. Okay, now education is 18.4, and you can see the numbers there. Now, I want to kind of position this a little bit to get you thinking. Now, each territory is going to be different, right? You may not have any healthcare facilities in your territory, or you might have very, very few, right? You might have very, very few education. Maybe you have a lot, depending on the town, county, things like that. And they all use janitorial supplies. Building service contractors are in the business. And they're really the only industry that's actually in the business. So every single day, they should be using your supplies in executing their job. In a school, as an example, yes, they might be pushing a mop. They might be pushing a dust mop. They might be spraying some product down, what have you. But they're not doing it between 9 and 5. They're doing it, after school, 3 till midnight. And they're doing a multiple of things, right? They're sometimes putting out, fixing lights, stripping floors. They're doing all kinds of things. Now, they use supplies, but they're not in the business. Right? Building service contractors are in the business. So you are much more important to a building service contractor because their business is built around using supplies. Education, industrial, it's something that they do. So getting in and focusing on building service contractors is obviously one of the better things to do, because they are going to continually use your products and services all of the time. Having said that, they also don't traditionally carry a lot of inventory. So as an example, you can go to an education facility and maybe they've bought all of the floor finish for the year, right? Maybe they have a whole bunch of product on the shelf in each of the custodial closets. But a building service contractor, they don't traditionally have months and months and months of supplies. They might have a week or two. Some are the exception. But if you get their business, you don't have to wait too long for them to deplete their supplies because they're using them all the time. And you coming in can be a lot faster, where sometimes you'll get an education account and they have 6 months worth of product. You're waiting. That is a slow burn before you actually start getting that product, and before it starts going into all the schools, before they start moving that product and using that product on a regular basis. So just something to be aware of, that building service contractors kind of drive the needle a little bit more than others. Now, with selling supplies, you want to take a look that 51.7% of the percentage of sales goes to paper, right? Now, paper is traditionally toilet tissue and hand towels. Now, equipment is 7.6. Supplies, sanitation supplies, that might be that's garbage bags, microfiber, but it's also baby change tables and things like that. So that's something to be aware of. And chemical is 32% of the market. Now, the interesting thing about this is that paper only constitutes 23% of profit. Now, this data is a few years old. ISSA has not come up with anything recent. This is about 5 years old. That was up in the mid-30s, not 8 years ago. So paper takes a hit all the time. It's a very competitive market. Janitorial supply companies that are bigger and are in the re-D business and stuff as well have really contributed to pushing down those margins, because they will go after the large accounts themselves and then supply their products and redistribute their products to the smaller janitorial supply companies, because they don't want the cost of delivering to each of those locations, things like that. They just want to drop a box. But a large, huge facility or organization, like let's say a Walmart or something like that, they want to take on their own. So they go in, they don't really know how to sell services and support and all those things. They know how to move a box, drop a box, and they don't want to even sell small orders. They just want a pallet of product to come in and not even really hit their floor and go back into the truck and go to Walmart as an example. And in a lot of cases, they don't even want it to come into the warehouse. They just want to have the paper supplier drop the pallet right off, because there's no delivery costs. So they help drive down the margins, which is an issue, but it's also an opportunity. And depending on what side you're on, you're going to see it from a different perspective, whether or not you're working for one of those organizations or whether or not you're working for a smaller outfit. Regardless, you can see the profit margins. Now, chemical is your best bet to focus on. And the reason for that is you have higher margins, but equipment can be a large sale. And it's good to focus on equipment, and equipment one hit a piece of equipment per month can really help you make your number. However, those aren't repeatable sales usually, right? Someone buys an auto scrubber, they're not buying another one for 5-10 years, right? Same with auto scrubbers or floor polishers, things like that. So they're great to focus on. Absolutely. You want to grow that. And some distributors have a mandate that a certain percentage of sales goes to equipment, such as vacuums, things like that. But they're not recurring revenue, right? Paper is recurring revenue. It's cash flow business. Chemical is recurring revenue. Sanitation supplies, such as microfiber cloths, as an example, garbage bags, that's recurring revenue. And of course, miscellaneous, 31%, things like that. That's baby change tables, things along those lines. So just understand the average margin. Now, that's the average, okay? And so very quickly, just want to divert. if you are to say I have a competitive advantage in my marketplace, how do you know you have a competitive advantage? Well, that is based on using this data as your guide. So as an example, if your chemical sales are higher than 35%, then whatever you're doing is working, right? If that's the average for your company, then whatever you're doing is working, right? It's higher than the industry average. So if it's 36%, 40%, what have you, you're doing something right. It might be you're doing nothing right. It might be just in that area. You're in a smaller town, smaller county. People pay higher margins, things like that. It might be that your selling process, your systems are in place that really help drive that competitive advantage. If you're 35% or under, then you don't have a competitive advantage as far as the marketplace goes. There's something going on that you're not making the average in the industry. So just a side note, kind of good place to judge where you're at. If you're higher, then you have a competitive advantage. And if you're not higher, then there's definitely room for improvement. And it could be selling skills. It could be operational processes. It could be a lot of things. Now, I want to end the data just with this, because this is end user satisfaction. Okay. And you're going to see that 17% are very satisfied. Okay. Now, this is important data for a reason, which I'll get into in just a sec, but I want you to pay attention to this. So 17% is very satisfied. 26% is satisfied. And 57% is, whatever. So the nice thing about this is that basically 57%, so out of every 2 calls you make, you have a 50% chance to be able to create some type of opportunity, because they're neutral, right? They're not satisfied, they're not unsatisfied. They're just like, yeah, whatever. Focusing on the 17% that's very satisfied, your competitor is doing something right in that circumstance, and to fight up that, it's not worth the battle, because you want to grow your business. It's someone to focus on. It's someone to have a follow-up process in place. Absolutely. You want to be brought to the table when there's opportunities, but they're very satisfied. And these people, if you go and you create an opportunity, as an example, you walk in, you show them a fantastic product that really makes a change, 9 times out of 10, because they're very satisfied, they are going to call their existing supplier, your competitor, and say, so-and-so brought in this product. It's really great. Do you have something similar? That is going to happen 75% of the time. Even though it's kind of immoral, it is what it is. It's just human nature. They're loyal to the incumbent. And so even though you have that opportunity, it's still going to create issues for you. And the odds of you getting that business is a challenge. The people that are satisfied, same thing. There's an opportunity there for sure. Keep them in your pipeline. Focus on them. Have a nurture program. Have a follow-up program. You want to be brought to the table when there's an opportunity, or when they're looking, or something like that. But the return on effort is not going to be there as much as the person that is just neutral, because this is a person that it doesn't have a lot of loyalty to who they're at. They're just basically getting their supplies, and it's an opportunity for you to make them care about what's going on. These people, based on this, just they don't care. They're neutral. It's an opportunity for us to show them something different, and to make them care, and make supplies be something that is in their focus. It's something that they're looking at and focused on because you've brought it to their attention. So this is the best area to focus on. So the job, the strategy is to recognize that 1 in 2 calls is going to have a great opportunity, if you do things properly, to be able to get in the door and create some business. So that is the industry average. Okay, that's the industry data. Now I want to focus on talk about just the sales industry in general, and what do customers and prospects and end users, what do they want from a sales experience?